button there.
Oh, sorry. Okay. All right. I just wanted to talk about the idea about the indoor sports centre. I'm not actually a sporty person, but I deal a lot with older people in our community. So I've now joined a bowling club, and there's a lot of the older people go out in inclement weather to watch their grandkids play all sorts of different sports. There's also, a lot of us who, and in our club, which is the Waikanae Beach Bowling Club, we have about 8 over 80s who play, and maybe 10 or 12 over 70s who play. But it's not very good for our health to have to play outside. So what I was suggesting, that if you are thinking about an indoor sports centre, perhaps you could think a bit wider and include an outdoor lawns bowl facility in there, and maybe some other ones as well as a restaurant and cafe. And that would sort of appeal to a much wider group of people who could make use of it for all sorts of different reasons, whether they're coming along to see what a particular sport is like, or whether they're coming to support somebody or to have a go. And I was sort of thinking, like for the bowls community, we involve in our group from Paikakariki all the way out to Waitarere Beach. So it seems to me that it's really something that Kāpiti and Horowhenua could think about developing together. Nainai has built an indoor facility for lawn bowls, and that is really popular. There are other ones. Paritutu up in New Plymouth has got one. So, yeah, that's all. Just leave it with you to think about. I only bring it up now because, these things take, 10 years to just develop thinking and whatever. So this is obviously just the start of the process.
Thank you. Thank you, Annie. There'll be questions. Any questions? Councillor Compton.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, I can confess I am an ex-indoor bowler, but my older brother and mum are both outdoor bowlers, and they really enjoy the Nainai facility that you referenced there. How many people would you say within the Kāpiti district play outdoor bowls?
Well, it'd be hundreds, because there's just in Kāpiti there's about 7 or 8 clubs, and we're one of the smaller clubs, and we've got about 70 playing members. So yeah, other ones would have 100, 120, more than that.
And so there's a very big pool of people who would make use of this.
Yeah. But I was also told, that there's people who want to play bowls but don't want to join a club. So, they would make use of a facility like that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Coates.
Good morning. It's afternoon, isn't it? And thanks for coming along and speaking to your submission. Sorry, we've been here for so long you start to forget whether it's morning or night. I'm interested in your comments around council not needing to increase its own supply of pensioner housing. Palmerston North, for example, have redeveloped the site and provided better quality homes and more occupancy. Yeah. Is that, if we were looking at our existing sites and stock, is that something that you would support council looking at to provide additional accommodation for the vulnerable in our community?
Well, I guess I'm not particularly thinking about the elderly as the vulnerable in the community, because there are so many organisations like Ryman's and Somerset and everybody else who is trying to develop outfits in this area. So it didn't seem to me that there's a particular need for that. There certainly is at the other end of the scale.
So you would support it towards the other end of the scale?
Yeah. I think what we don't have in New Zealand, this is not a Kāpiti issue, but a New Zealand issue, is we don't have what's called like entry level housing where you expect to just, buy a house to get a start on the ladder and, sell up in 6 or 8 years, and then get yourself into the house that you really want. So all we seem to be providing is the houses at that end of the market, which we would all aspire to, but, it is stupid to sort of have to do that right from the start.
Thanks very much, Anne.
Kathy.
Good afternoon, Anne. Thank you for coming. Would you support funding going into the council's long-term plan to pay for a feasibility study around an indoor sports stadium to talk with people in our communities, young people, older people, people with disabilities?
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. But I mean, I would sort of think about including Horowhenua as well, because you want to have a bigger
yes.
base, of people and money to build something like that. I mean, it's big bucks you're talking about.
It is, yes. Great for that. Thank you.
Councillor Pravana.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just make a little comment. I see your comments about agricultural land being used for housing. We've had a number of conversations about that over the last couple of days. So my question relates to the sports centre. An interesting thought about having playing bowls inside. Do you have any idea sort of what area would be needed to accommodate that?
Well, no, because it depends on exactly what you're going to put inside the
minimum
sports
area.
centre. Yeah, but once again, that depends, because you wouldn't be doing it only for one green. You'd be doing it for lots of other activities as well.
Thank you. Because I assume so basically that area could only be used to play bowls, and you couldn't.
Well, that's why I'd make it a bigger centre, so that you would include a whole lot of other sporting events.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Doesn't seem to be any. Thank you for coming and presenting your submission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next submitter, Mr. Booth.
And
Right. And you brought the chair of the trust itself. Thank you. Welcome.
Tēnā koutou katoa. We've got both myself, Pat Stewart, and Mātu Booth. I'm the chair of the Ngā Manu Trust. I've been chair for just on 16 months, so I'm a fairly newbie in the organisation, but a lot has happened over those 16 months. I just wanted to thank you very much for your proposal to fund Ngā Manu through the LTP. I think most of you understand our recent history in terms of making applications for the Provincial Growth Fund. We started with very big dreams. We narrowed them down, but neither of them were successful. But we are committed to developing the visitor experience at Ngā Manu, and an important part of that, and particularly from our financial viability perspective, is to have something for people with whatever the conditions. And the visitor centre at the moment is really just a place to walk through in order to get into the reserve. It doesn't provide really any comfort for visitors, nor is there a particular reason for them to stay for longer than just to pick up their ticket and go. So we're looking to develop the visitor centre. That was our plan under the Provincial Growth Fund. Obviously, we have to slim down our views considerably, but we believe with the council's support, we will be in a much better position, particularly around fundraising, because often that commitment from the local district council is the thing that gets you over the line, particularly with some of the bigger funding organisations. I want to just mention that over the last little while, we've doubled our workforce. we had, I think Martu can give you the details, something like 3 FTE. We've now got about 6 FTE. And that is a commitment from the board to improve our business capability. So we've actually now got a business development manager, a fundraiser, and an administration person who can help us put together those significantly important databases which underpin our ability to run events and also to fundraise. The other thing I would say is that we are essentially a voluntary organisation. The board is a voluntary group of people. We're very, very lucky that we have the commitment from people with a lot of experience who bring to the table. We're upping the game, if you like, improving our professionalism and our governance strategies to make us a better organisation. And so our commitment on the board is partnered with the commitment or the investment that we're making in staff. One of the things that we're very keen to do is to continue to develop our relationship with mana whenua. It's very much in the infancy stage at the moment, but we are among the organisations which we believe are critically important to Waikanae and the Kapiti Coast. I'll just hand over to Martu.
Thanks, Pat. I'd like to urge you all to think of Ngā Manu as our district's version of Zealandia or Pukaha, and by that I mean it's much more than just a recreational or visitor experience. There's a long history, 45 years of protecting the site and its values. The lowland swamp forest is the calling card to the early trust, and we've had that long a time of relationship with DOC, involved with breed for release programs for species such as kiwi, whio, blue duck, tuatara, kaka, brown teal, and some significant local conservation effort as well, going into species like yellow-crowned parakeet, which is released this year in Puangiangi Island, Marlborough Sounds, green gecko to Mana Island to restore the population there, Whitaker skink, an extinct species extinct from Pukurua Bay. We hold almost the entire captive population of that species as well. So many of the 20,000 people who visited last year will only see the tip of the iceberg of animals on display and not realise that there's a huge conservation effort happening behind the scenes. Of those 20,000, 1,500 last year, due to COVID, down from the percentage down from the year before, but 1,500 were education-related visits. The schools see Ngā Manu as an important hub and resource in the area. There were 500 visits from those with disabilities and their carers. So these all speak to aspects of the site that make it have a broad appeal, yet our kaupapa is related to real conservation outcomes and has been for that length of time. There are over 60 active volunteers at Ngā Manu, and we're supported by 300 members who pay subscription to help us on our way. We're undergoing a strategic planning process at the moment, which includes all levels of the organisation, from the trust right through to our volunteers, and that is helping reshape our trust vision, trust deed, to set it within the context that we now need to have it as we go forward. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for that. Matthew, can I go back to when we were going through the PGF process? And I know that the initial response from your organisation was to think conservative. You were encouraged by Al Morrison, the regional Santa Claus for PGF, to think bigger, and you had dipped your hands into your reserve funding to do some considerable work on it. But I remember saying that even if you don't get your PGF funding, that exercise itself would be good to envision ahead. Has that been useful? And there's not money wasted?
Yeah, absolutely. We look upon the experience with PGF as being a bit of a washing machine experience. We all came out of it feeling fairly weary, but I think there's a universal feeling now that that has been what supplied our determination, and we went into that process desperately identifying and wanting the infrastructure that we thought it could deliver. What we've done, as Pat's indicated, is we've put a business team in place and going about the same sorts of goals, but from the perspective of having the expertise in place so we can drive it a little more successfully than we might have if we'd been delivered our dreams in the first place.
Councillor Elliott.
Look, thank you so much for your submission and for all of your work. So marvellous. I'm just looking at the second part of your submission and just wanting to, I can understand that the immediate plans to improve the existing visitor centre up to 150,000 and a feasibility study for the proposed forest canopy walkway. So the 100,000 that's there, is that the cost of feasibility study? I just wanted to determine what that would be going to.
I have to say that we haven't done any further work on determining the cost of that feasibility study. So that is really a rough breakdown of how we would spend the original amount of money. I think that it would be fair to say that a pretty thorough feasibility study which looked at all of the issues is likely to be an expensive undertaking, but if we did go ahead with such a proposal, we would be looking at least $3 million to achieve it. So the investment is upfront in terms of understanding what it will take to do it, essentially. But again, that's just brief understanding of what we think it would cost. It could be less, could be more.
Thank you. I think I get where it is now. That's great. Thank you.
Councillor Pravana.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Pat and Marty, for coming along today to speak to this and for persevering, given what you've been through. It's an amazing asset that we have in our community. And I suppose with this type of financial benefit, could you see, if that's what Namanu is looking for, this to become one of the key tourist attractions in the Kāpiti coast?
Yes, I believe that it has that potential. I think what, and Marta eloquently described what we learnt from our last 2 years, and one of them is about growing the business from a sustainability perspective, ensuring that we are able to do it at our pace, but we do see that there is huge potential, and now with the signage everywhere, and we have to thank Council for ensuring that is, we do notice a lot more people finding their way to Ngā Manu. Like a lot of organisations in our position, we have not had international tourists. Last year, the February, March, we really noticed that in our financial statements, but when the borders reopen, certainly that we hope to become an important drop-off point for visitors to this country. But in the meantime, what we want to do is improve our reach in the region. That's a critical thing, and we obviously, like a lot of people, businesses out here, see the opening of, should I mention it, Transmission Gully as being a real opportunity for us to showcase what we have in Waikanai, and also I think that's one of the reasons why we want to do the visitor centre, so we're in a better position to provide an opportunity for people to come and explore, maybe have something to eat, enjoy what we have to offer.
Councillor Coates.
Well, welcome to you both here today. The father of two young 13 and 16-year-olds, and through their various ages have been to Ngā Manu several times, to the Sanctuary in Wellington, and also to the overhead walkway in Rotorua. So certainly appreciate what you're trying to achieve there. The contribution that is being sought through the LTP is not insignificant from a ratepayer perspective. And in reading through the proposal, I couldn't see whether there was anything around education, internship, and so forth. Is there some of that already being done by Ngā Manu? Because I think there's some education aspects, but is there opportunity for internships for younger folk looking at a career in that field?
In terms of the internships or scholarships, Ngā Manu already offers two $3,000 scholarships to Victoria and Massey universities for a study that we would prefer it would happen at Ngā Manu, but because we can offer accommodation through the cottage as well. We also offer internships to wild-based students, which are taken on an annual basis, so they send their vet students down to spend a couple of weeks with our staff on site. But there's none of the money that would go directly to those supporting those internships in the first place. We could comfortably spend it all on the visitor centre, just making that a more comfortable place for our general visitors. But there are those other aspects, including research. So there's Ngā Manu, it's used as a research site for students, even without the uptake of the scholarships. So there's a history of that sort of involvement with the tertiary community already.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Hempel.
Kia ora korua. My question is kind of taking a slightly different tact. I'm just keen to know what thought you've given to the potential kind of low carbon ways of actually getting to Ngā Manu. I'm just looking now, if I was to leave from my house to get to Ngā Manu, I'd either have to catch a train and then walk 57 minutes or catch 3 buses and walk about an hour in between each of those bus stops. So I'm just wondering if you've given much thought as to what kind of advocacy role you can play in ensuring those links to actually get to Ngā Manu are low carbon, and that there are ways that people can do that so that we're starting to link up with our with our transit stops. Buses and train stations.
The most obvious, and the one that we'll probably pursue at some point, is there's a bus link that takes people to the Waikanai Pool, which is about 3k from Ngā Manu. That's as close as it gets at the moment, but there would be an obvious extension of that route to take in Ngā Manu and include it from railway station to Ngā Manu, if not all year round, certainly during the summer months as a starter. So it would be on our wish list, but at the same time, I think we have to think about upping it at Ngā Manu as a destination that people can get a cup of coffee and something to eat at as well.
And maybe recharge their EV at the same time.
Yeah.
Councillor McCann.
My apologies, my question has pretty much been asked, so I'm going to ask, where did you get that shirt? Because I've got pocket envy.
Do I answer that or not? I love ugly.
Absolutely your choice. Very good. And is that your question?
I suppose if I can yell, have you talked to Greater Wellington Regional Council about potential of changing bus services in the summer months?
Not as yet.
Councillor Buswell.
Thanks for coming in today, and you're an absolute integral part of our story of Kāpiti Coast. And this morning I was able to have a quick peek at what the destination plan is looking like, and I'm really hoping that you have fed into that through our contractors for that.
Yes, we had an early discussion with them, and we're as eager as you to hear what the outcome or find out what the results are. I know that the work is ongoing, but it's an integral part of it. But I think that the hint seems to be that the nature connection is pretty important to the district, and coast, obviously, but I think we're right in there in terms of what we can offer.
Absolutely, and I think with the quick glimpse that I saw, it's all about nature, and it's about food and wine.
Yeah.
So you are absolutely on the right track to be able to really capitalise on what is already coming. You know, like in terms of the tourist dollar coming to Kāpiti, that's what they're wanting to enjoy. So on the back of that, that should also help you perhaps seek funding elsewhere as well. So thanks for coming in today and all the work that you do in our community. Thank you.
Councillor Halliday.
Good morning. Thank you very afternoon. Sorry. Look, I just have a question. Look, you guys do such fantastic work in the conservation space around endangered species. As such, I'm just curious to know: are there income streams available through that work that you do? Are there like government contracts with regards to conservation area in that area that provides an income to Ngā Manu at all?
We receive no funding directly from DOC, although we are in receipt of a relief fund presently that was administered through COVID support for that. But that's pretty much a one-off. I think DOC's perspective is that we receive the benefit of being able to display some of the species that we then working in programs with them. So the Kiwi House, for instance, would be the key destination of most of our overseas tourists, to be sure, and a lot of our locals as well. And we're able to turn that opportunity into things that are good advocacy for those species. So that pleases DOC, an example being the Kiwi Night Encounters. So we've established that as an added opportunity for public to come and view kiwi up close. So, but apart from those, that most obvious connection that most people would assume that we are a recipient of DOC money to be in that. No, there's nothing else that comes our way.
Could I just add? I think the point that you're raising is one that the board is very interested in pursuing as well, because Matu is right. Part of our value is the fact that we have captive breeding programs, and we have birds for people to view, which you don't get at Zealandia. You get it at Wellington Zoo, but so that's our unique proposition, if you like. But it does come with a cost, and particularly housing and feeding. And I think that those issues that you're obviously tuning in your mind are ones that we're thinking about too. But I think we haven't at this stage started to explore that yet.
Thank you for that. And you're right. But I'm just curious to clarify. So the infrastructure, say, with the Kiwi House, does my money pay for that, or does DOC pay for that?
No, that's all paid by Ngā Manu. All of the infrastructure, all of the housing, all Ngā Manu infrastructure.
That's quite interesting. I just, there'll be the assumption perhaps that is paid for by external sources. That's very interesting to know.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Oh, look, thank you. Luckily, in about 2.5 hours, our submission to Greater Wellington Regional Council has been presented verbally in Wellington, and so you can add on the request verbally to extend that Waikanae pool bus. So that can happen in 2.5 hours. But I just wanted to capture you while you're here, because we have to engage on social media community pages a lot, and we do find that when there is an injured seabird or an injured bird or a starling or a tui, whatever, that the first port of call people comment on is take it to Ngā Manu, ring Ngā Manu. So I just want to take the opportunity to ask you too, are you resourced to be the first port of call for injured birds on the Kāpiti coast, or what advice would you give us to give the public?
Yeah, it's a question I've just been talking over with some staff recently, actually. Ngā Manu has a long history of being a rehab centre, so when Peter set it up, it was the first port of call for most people when they came across injured wildlife. And as time's gone on, the facilities that wildlife rehabbers and hospitals can offer has really diverged from what we can offer. So we're at the level still of barefoot doctors, and now if anybody rings us with an injured bird, we would advise them to try to get it to the nest at Wellington Zoo or Wild Base in Palmerston first. And we're more and more in the position of not being able to offer the sort of backup care that our public still expect that we can. So there's a critical question coming up for us about where we sit in that landscape.
Thank you. Really happy to help you with that when we get the chance.
Thank you. Thanks.
No other questions, so thank you very much for coming and presenting your submissions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Otaki Surf Life Saving Club, Neil. Welcome. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Are you coming up? Yeah. Neil Ames is our club president. He's very much the champion of public speaking in our club. He signed me up for this. Essentially, we've read the draft submission, and we're here speaking in opposition of your proposed $1 per club member pool admission charge. You plan to sort of blanket across all clubs in the district. We accept that the increase in lane charges is part of sort of the natural price cycle, but the $1 per swimmer might seem like a token gesture. It does add considerable costs overall if we look at it in terms of a percentage increase. And there's also the administration costs of no longer do you just walk into the pool, you either have to pay in person or the club would have to perform some sort of a roll call and submit that cost weekly. Our members swim approximately 40 weeks of the year, twice a week, and we consider ourselves somewhat unique in respect of clubs on the coast, and that our club members pay a membership, and obviously we pay lane charges. That would be an additional sort of $80 roughly a year, with households with several members and a single income would feel this cost even more. As a charitable community club, we provide a safety and rescue service at Otiki Beach, giving back to the community. Our 50 plus lifeguards with first aid levels 1 and 2, trained in radio communication and rescue techniques. Our members voluntarily then give back their time to patrol at the beach at Otiki every summer. We've saved many lives, performed first aid and organised searches. This most recent season, 2,000 plus hours of voluntary patrol performed, including beachgoer and water safety for significant events like the Kite Festival, for example. Lifeguards must prove their fitness by performing a refresher each year, and ongoing training in the pool is critical to achieve optimum strength and stamina in the water. It is not in the public interest to create barriers to pool access for our beach lifeguards. In summary, the Otiki Surf Life Saving Club strongly opposes this additional cost. Personally, it makes that was very much Neil Ames' submission. Personally, it makes sense to me in terms of collecting statistics. I think that's where the token $1 gesture might have come from. There's not really any guidance from you guys on that. But it does add complexity, it does add considerable costs. We pay a lane bulk charge at the moment, and we feel our club's quite unique in that we give back to the community in those voluntary hours. We're not purely just for recreation at the club, at the pool. That's the submission. Is there any questions?
Questions?
Yeah.
Councillor Goods, I'm waiting. Councillor Goods.
Kia ora, James, Otaki Ward Councillor. Could you articulate the level, I guess, of hardship that you do see within the community with existing costs, even without the supervisor $1 proposal?
We currently pay the lane charge fee. So our members pay a club fee. Most of that goes towards paying for our lane charges during the summer season, during the off season for training, and then on top of that, our 50 plus lifeguards will be $1 each, twice a week, essentially. So you're talking like a 50+% increase in fees for each individual member to swim. I don't have the exact figures, no, sorry.
But do any of the families that you see go through either the surf club or the pool facility have difficulty with just finances in general?
I would say yes.
Yeah, I would say
I think there's probably a few families that would really impact on them as well, especially if you've got you know, two or three children and things. Myself, I've got 2 older kids, and they'd probably expect me to pay, which is fine. But you know, if you've got and also it's finding the change, or you know, whichever way it's going to be administered. Because nobody really carries cash anymore as well. But I think it would actually impact some families, and I think there would be a few that would probably stop coming. I mean, we try and keep our registration fee at quite a low level. We haven't raised that in about 3 or 4 years because we're conscious that we want to make it actually, you know, a manageable amount for families.
I mean, personally, it wouldn't affect me, but Neil feels quite strongly that it would affect some members, and it's likely it's the kind of thing that people don't speak up on. They just stop coming. It's just another barrier and cost. You know, if they've got several kids, larger families would feel the pinch even more, and so it's just like Justine's saying, it's one more thing you've got to find change for, or we have to increase our membership fees to offset that with no sort of rebate from you guys. Be the only solution, and it would be discouraging. To me, I remember when I was a youngster, you just basically walk in and get into the pool. There'd be no admin. You wouldn't have to have mum's EFOS card or a dollar or anything to pay. So if that was the chosen route of administration, that creates complexities. Or the club has to do a roll call and then pay back weekly or something like that. So it does add admin, it does add costs, it does add barriers. Yeah.
Okay, thanks guys.
Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for coming along to talk today. So I suppose this matter also concerns volunteer swim clubs as well. So just specifically about your club, when you actually use the pool, which I assume is the Aotaki pool, what times of the day are you using it? I suppose what I'm asking here is whether or not you're using it instead of other people who potentially would be using it, or is it actually at 5 o'clock in the morning, for example?
Yeah,
or whatever.
It is at sort of the downtime, I guess, in the evenings. The pool's often exceptionally quiet. Mondays and Wednesdays we have the last slot before pool close. The lifeguards are often sort of just packing down the pool and cleaning up. They obviously have safety requirements to the lifeguards, which there's some irony in that. But it is at the end of the evening. The administration sort of closes, and that we're not. I don't think we're occupying or putting off the public in terms of offsetting or a cost, you know, for them, creating any sort of barriers for the public. And we don't occupy the whole pool either. We normally just have between 1 and sort of 4 lanes, which is about half the pool, up to about half the pool. We're certainly not pushing anyone out of the pool in that regard, no.
It's definitely off-peak.
That's off-peak, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your submission.
Thanks.
Thank you. John Mills. John, we heard you last night. You got anything new to add?
I didn't catch that, but anyway, kia ora, Guru.
All I said was we heard you last night.
Yes.
And have you got anything new to add would be useful. Where you go.
Well, I noticed that there's at least 3 councillors that haven't heard me, but you're getting my handout that my printer just packed a sad, but I managed to just get you 20 copies of the executive summary and price report from the Ozcon company that I've had a bit of correspondence with for the last 8 years, and they've given a good thing there, so I've tabled that, and I wanted to carry on from getting to where I had I got to last night, but I think I ran out of time.
Okay then, you got the time now.
Well, we're talking managed retreat, you know, and I'm not, don't think, please, of me fighting against the sea level rise thing. I'm not arguing that whatsoever. I question it, and I am definitely a skeptic, but if we, like, with the like for like timber wall that's proposed, if it goes in like that, I've showed you a photo of what I handed out last night, and my website's on it. It's looking like a wharf sometimes now, and it gets worse every time that there's a good blow. And not only that, but the trend is for when the sea erodes the beach, it always goes down to the bottom of the wall, and then you have trouble. So if you had it, I know that if we put palings in at 3.5 metres down, the sea would then take it down to there, then undermine the back of the wall, because the fill can get under it, then it beats the wall to death. So I'm seriously and urgently, as I have been for 8 years, calling for a different design. Now, the design that was consented, I kind of agreed to, because it had a lowered walkway, but it still had a metre of wall in front of the sea, which is going to give you, it's still going to give you turbulence. Now, what the papers that I handed out last night are photographs of about 8 different walls in Australia that have been done, and they all encouraged the sand to come back. Now, for the benefit of those that weren't here last night, we at Taikakariki have got a very tenuous hold on the foreshore. Like, when a vertical wall is built, you can guarantee that the beach is going to drop at least 1.5 metres, and it's dropped even more than that in some places, down to 2.5 metres. And so it's a serious problem, and this information's been out via the Wellington Regional Council and many others, as well as myself, for the last 10 years at least, and I'm concerned that there's too much attention being paid to maybe cost saving, but when you, I think I've proved, and I'm assured that those figures that I've given you there, that fit within our budget, stack up. Now, if sea level does rise, and I'll say once more, I'm not saying that it's not going to, and I have always promoted preparing for it, but if we put in the wall that I'm advocating, and the sea level does rise, we want to have a reef or a breakwater or something, because the tests that we've seen, wave tests and that sort of thing, when you get a decent solid thing out there in front, even if it's underwater, it still stops the bulk of the wave, and then the top of the wave, the overtopping, will become manageable. Now, with gabion baskets that we're promoting as well, I know from my own experience that I can do them for $500 a metre, and if you want to add a contingency to that, say $700 a metre. You know, that's a whole metre, the whole length of our nearly kilometre of a seawall, a metre high, which will do the secondary protection. That's for only $500,000, or just over $500,000. So the figures I'm giving you are realistic, and the designs are all allowed for in there. And the other thing is, I know that you've got this managed retreat thing that you're really going to be pushing more and more. It's the catchword that's now accepted and is going to be, and I understand in the future it's going to be pushed more and more. But there's no reason for us to say managed retreat, we will, pull back from supporting the parade at Paikakariki. That's going to turn us into a place like, and I'm not knocking them, but Pukerua Bay, where you can't actually get a vehicle down there, and you can, it's like a goat track. I've actually supplied materials down there, and I've had a look at works there myself, and it's very difficult. You've got to actually do anything major you do, you've got to take in by sea. We don't want that to happen in Paikakariki, and and I know that if we were to really go hard out, we would have the support of many, many people up and down the coast. But not only that, because you're going that way, and you've said you're going that way, you're still okaying, or you're still granting consents for brand new houses down the parade, which in 20 years' time, if what you say is going to happen, and that they're going to become uninhabitable or severely challenged, then why are you granting consents for them now? So that needs to stop if that's the case, but that's not what we want at all. We want, instead of managed retreat, we want managed defence. Managed retreat's fine for Queen Elizabeth Park, because it can go back, and you've only got a couple of toilet blocks to demolish and take back. The surf club, yes, the walkway bridge, which I happen to have built, yes, but when people have actually invested their life savings and they've got their house, I used to say to people, spend the price of a car and you can protect the front of your property. But as it turns out, I was wrong for many years, because we were putting in vertical walls, and now some of their walls are becoming under threat. As I said last night, in the last 10 years we've been going very deep, and so our walls happen to last much longer. In fact, we've had no failures yet, and the beach has got another 1,200 mil to drop before anything serious happens. But there are other walls, and whenever a decent storm happens, I actually do well, because I go down to the beach with my crane truck and I get enough timber to last me for about 3 or 4 years. So I think I've probably done enough. I don't know that I got 3 minutes last night, but I think I'll probably...
I think you certainly got a good wallop of it anyway. Question time, yeah. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, John, for coming back. It has been well worth it. So the proposed seawall you have in here, is that two parts to this question? Is that consistent with the desired design by the community?
Well, yes. Yes, it is.
Okay. And the second part of that question, if we change to this material, would it need reconsenting to go back through the consenting process?
Maybe, but not necessarily. But if it does need reconsenting, it's all allowed for. So if we're talking money, and we're talking global expertise there, and so it's not, and I mean this, it's not a fly-by-night company. There is heaps of experience there, but also heaps of results.
Thank you very much.
It's the return of the sand that I'm looking for, and it's the depression of the violence of the waves that are knocking our properties out.
Councillor Holbrook.
Hi, John. Thanks for coming back and explaining further and giving us this design. I've got a question about the design itself. Does it use any more space out from the road out towards the sea than the community design group's design? Because
the community design group, I think they allowed for an extra 500 or something mil, because we recognised the need that the old wall was going to need to be taken out, and it was going to be too hard to rebuild it. So if it did need to go out any further, and believe me, if it does, then it should, because it's looking like a wharf now. You know, you've got it's. I hesitate to say it, but if anyone was to stand under that wall, that's especially when it's washed out, and it suddenly collapsed, it would just absolutely kill anyone. It's actually very dangerous, and not only that, it's very dangerous because it hasn't got fall protection. Now, the wall that was consented, there was a lower pathway out of the. Oh, sorry, I'm talking to Janet. Out the front, wasn't it? And I agreed to that because of the reflection of the waves, and it was going to be less drastic on the loose sand. But the thing about it is, if we have to change, then there's a new consent would have to be got. But because it's allowed for, and if it doesn't need to be got, and I think we've got 11 metres I measured, and so that could fit in. But whether it does or not, we need the sand back in Paikokariki. And the I'm not sure about the actual position, Janet, but the actual shape of the wall is basically the same, except for that front step. And then you've got another step. You've got a 1200 mil step. Then you've got another 1200 mil step. That's two big bluffs where the waves come in. That's a lot of reflection down, and that still makes the sand returning tenuous as well. So the better stepped option, which is what I'm advocating, and what I've proved by all those photos, actually, you know, 3 metres high. 3 metres high. That was the best one. That was where the sand came back. That's a lot. You know, one of the step walls was actually buried completely, which is what we want.
Right, so the answer to my question is yes.
Pardon?
I was asking if the design in here would take up more horizontal room than the design group consented design.
No, I don't know. Maybe. I can't answer that.
Okay.
Councillor Brabner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for coming along again. John, you obviously got a great amount of knowledge and expertise on designing such structures. But I noticed during your presentations that you're talking about protecting houses. You've mentioned that a number of times. But is it your understanding that the reason that council is actually wanting to do this work is about protecting council assets, not houses?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor McCann.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Hi, John. I wasn't here last night, so I apologise for that, but I've been frantically catching up. I just wanted to know, do you have independent reports on the design method and construction that can be forwarded to councillors?
I'm sure that we could get them, but they're all from Aussie.
Yep. That would obviously.
Well, you know, I know they're underarm bowlers, but you know.
That would obviously be helpful to have some of that, to have some independent verification, because as you can see, the cost is extremely high. So whatever we are deciding on really
needs... Well, it's not high compared to the timber wall. It's basically, it's even slightly lower than what we've been quoted for the timber wall.
I take your point, but whatever we do is there is a considerable expense. So it would be great if you could send through any independent reports or information. Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm sure that it's a good job for them, and I know that they'll come forward with whatever information you need.
Councillor Rendell.
Yeah, thank you. So, John, you would probably not disagree if this wall was postponed and for maybe another annual plan or someone.
Oh, I don't know.
No, hold on. No, I haven't finished the question yet.
Pardon me.
Yeah. So that we can get doing some peer review and looking at alternative designs. Or, I mean, we've had different groups from the Paikakariki community over the last couple of days, all suggesting alternative plans, and alternative designs should be looked at. That's the first one. Secondly, at the end of the day, what you want is sand on the beach like the 70s.
Don't you?
Yeah, I remember. They were the good old days.
Oh, good. I like people too. And wherever they've put rocks, the rocks have gone so far out, there's no room for the people anymore. And, like I've said in another one of my letters or on my website, that the only people benefiting from no sand on the beach or the rocks are those property owners that get an unobstructed view without those pesky families out there enjoying themselves.
Right, John. No other questions. Thank you for coming and giving us your submission.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks, Sophie. Yeah.
Right. The next submitters, Kāpiti Health Advisory Group, Dr. Colin Feek and Mr. Don Hahn. Welcome.
Tēnā koutou, thank you. Good afternoon to you all. I'm Colin Feek and I represent the Kāpiti Health Advisory Group, and this is Don Hahn, who made this submission to you. We've cobbled together a two-pager really to summarise where we're at and update our proposal. I'm going to talk to you about KHAG, the advisory group. I'm also going to talk to you about the health network, and I'm also going to talk to you about you as a council, that your obligations and possible future obligations in health and how all this will fit together. KHAG was established 4 years ago as an advocacy group, primarily in response to the strong petition for a hospital at Kāpiti. Kathy was the chair and was appointed by the mayor, and a wide range of community groups used to attend the meeting. 2 years ago, the group changed its focus from advocacy to advisory to the mayor, and for 2 years, KHAG's undertaken extensive consultation within Kāpiti and to identify health service needs. And you will see that there are 5 priority areas identified: access to services, urgent care, mental health, care for disabled, and care for the elderly. These priorities have been discussed with CCDHB's Health Systems Committee and agreed with them, and actually include these priorities in their local planning. I would have to say that KHAG's had a good response with CCDHB, and they do have 2 people attending the meetings and reporting back to us, so that's very useful. And they're currently working to see whether some ophthalmology and respiratory services can be provided locally. So that's progress. KHAG has supported and lobbied for a number of improvements in the Kāpiti area, and these include the wheelchair-friendly shuttle and continuing support of that. We've published a brochure on options for transport to hospitals. We've also supported the Wellington Free Ambulance in their diversion scheme, and that thankfully has stopped about 500 people going into Wellington, so that's progress too. The WFA is a member of KHAG, and there is also work about to be completed for a website identifying health resources and related services in the Kāpiti area, and that should be available soon. We have requested through the mayor information from CCDHB as to where Kāpiti residents receive services, what's happening in the care for the elderly services, and who's travelling currently to Wellington Regional Hospital for urgent care and get discharged the same day. The purpose of that is so we can measure, are we making any difference? And also it's a useful vehicle for the mayor and information to go and discuss with CCDHB possible improvements. The network, Kāpiti Health Network, is established by Capital Coast Health. and congratulations for their forward thinking. It's been established in December last year. It's a partnership with iwi, Te Atiawa and Tuora Compass Health. I will also be a co-chair of that network. And you'll see if you turn over the page, there are 3 priorities that the network are involved in. One's quite complicated, is health and social care integration to address social complexity, such as residents in a local housing provider, and a project surrounding food scarcity. The local health housing provider, they have put in a primary care visit once a week, and that has actually reduced some of these poor, unfortunate people from going into Wellington Hospital. So that's the sort of thing we're looking at. The priorities fix well with KHAG. Since we made the submission, you'd be aware that's Heather Simpson's report on the health and disability services, and there is a white paper out in April 2021, which really places an emphasis on obviously major restructuring, but it does place an emphasis on local planning for services. And I think that's the critical area, and you may want to discuss what that might mean. Obviously, CCDHB will change, and we will have to develop new relationships with whatever the organisation takes over. But I would see that there's going to be continuity in local care planning, and CCDHB, to their credit, actually foreviewed that and saw that. Now, over to the council. Quite clearly, you now have a legal obligation to promote the 4 well-beings. And we would argue that health is an integral part of social well-being, and it actually probably contributes to the other 3. So we're not seeing you having to provide healthcare services, but what we do see you is making some contribution to their planning. And we think the KHAG and the network are vehicles to do this. So can we assist you in that? Also, looking to the future, it's quite clear that local government reforms probably on the horizon, and I think we're expecting from the Department of Internal Affairs discussion and the Society of Local Government Managers that there will be an expectation from councils to have a role in improving health services within the area under the jurisdiction. Lastly, you will all be aware of the pandemic, and I'm sure that in terms of future pandemics and also the wider public health management, there are going to be discussion on what is the role of the council. And clearly the Mayor has been involved with Capital Coast in terms of vaccination and are working with their plans on that. So it seem to be changing. Cutting to the crux of all this, so we want to really bring to your attention the role of KHAG and how we can assist you in local health matters. We would like to request some administrative support. I have to thank Kathy, who has really supported KHAG over 4 years, and as good as she is, it's not sustainable. But thank you very much, Kathy. We think there needs to be consideration as to how KHAG and the council staff interact. How far can existing staff be drawn upon? We've indicated, and it's a guess, that we think we may need a half FTE to help us. That comes to probably 50 to 80,000. We don't actually want the money to do it. We just want the council to help us do it. And you may also want to wish whether KHAG could be more formally drawn into your official administrative machinery. That's for you to consider. We live in interesting times. I see these times actually as an opportunity to address the deficiencies in health service provisions in Kāpiti. There are opportunities to innovate and do things differently to plan and get new community services that don't exist. Thank you for your time, and Don and I would be very happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Councillor Randall.
Yeah, thank you for your submission. I'm asking you a question. Surely your role should be more advocacy than advisory. Now, if your role is advisory to the mayor gets all the information and the power that comes with that information, and other people don't get that information unless he chooses to, share it around. And I've always been in favour of an advocacy role rather than an advisory role.
I actually think it can be both and more. I think it's advocacy, it's advisory to the mayor, and I actually think through the network we need to be influencing how services are going to be provided for local residents. It's difficult to predict the future, but I don't see the network, and I haven't been there yet, so I don't know, and this is a personal view, I don't see us providing services how we have done traditionally. So I think we're going to be looking for technology and innovation. So an example I could give you that I think Capital Coast Health are interested in, how could we do first specialist assessments in Kāpiti? And for example, you could do this through telehealth with a GP. The other example I would give you, I think there are important changes that are necessary in care for the elderly. I see the elderly as a big pyramid with the sickest, unfortunately, at the top and the rest. Currently, the top of the pyramid seems to circulate with regular monotony through Wellington Hospital, which is not a good thing. And the question is, how could we look after that community better? Then there's how do we actually prevent people getting into the top of the pyramid? Canterbury Health, for example, have done some very innovative things with their CREST program, and what it has is nurses and allied health actually looking after the elderly in their homes, taking them out of hospital and supporting them after early discharge. So there are novel ways we can do it. Capital Coast Health currently got a thing called CHOPPY, which is Care for the Older Persons Initiative. It started initially in one of the GP practices in town. It involves a geriatrician working with them to identifying the needs of that group of patients and see where they can be better managed. I think we need a CHOPPY plus. We actually need nurses and allied health to actually act on that as an extension. So I'm not promising that's going to happen, but all I'm saying there are really good examples of how we can improve health service for the elderly, which I think is on the agenda, and given Kāpiti's demography, I think it's really important.
Councillor McCann.
Kia ora, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for this informative submission. Just given what you've been talking about, have you made appointments with our Mana and Otaki electorate MPs to discuss these issues?
Sorry, with Otaka and Mani?
Otaki and Mana electorate MPs?
Not yet, no. I've only had my feet under the seat for under a month.
Fair enough. And while you're there, probably the health ministers as well. The second question, if I may, Mr. Mayor, is that housing has a significant effect on the health of most of our citizens. Are you aware that we are undertaking a social and housing needs assessment in the near future?
I am. I'll be quite honest, I'm a little nervous because I don't want housing to drown us, but I do absolutely agree that housing is an important impact, and there have been small initiatives with PHOs and others about improving insulation and other things, but I think we'd have to see when that needs comes out, what it looks like and what contribution we may have.
Yeah, and the question really was, would you be willing to take part in that? The only people I've heard of, effectively drowning in houses are through houses that don't have the moisture taken out of them, etc.
No, we would look at it and see what resources and where we go with it.
Thank you very much.
I'm always open to.
Councillor Holiday.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Look, firstly, Colin and Don and Kathy, I just want to thank you guys for the effort that you put into the Kāpiti Health Advisory Group. Since my involvement in it, not having a background in that area, I've been amazingly impressed by the skills and expertise that's sitting around that table. I think we're very, very fortunate to have this calibre of representation as we move forward. I guess that leads on to my other question, which is in the current structure that we have, do you feel that is fit for purpose? Are you looking at this role as sort of fleshing out the role of the Kapiti Health Advisory Group in regards to what's coming down the tube with regards to a lot of the changes that are happening?
Quite clearly, Kapiti Coastal Health appointed me to that group, knowing I was KHAG, and they did the same for Karen previously. They've made it very clear to me that they see the network as the doer. And from the papers I've seen, it is quite clear to me that they've actively put a lot of work into the network. And obviously it's going to take time to generate things, but I see that and the future provider, whoever they are, we have to really influence them and monitor them and make sure we're achieving positive things. So, and I would think the network will expand. And quite clearly, my view of what the reforms are saying is this is where the Actions Act, although that they've got all these major restructuring, it's not going to make much difference, whereas the local activity initiatives could do.
Councillor Hempel. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, look, I just wanted to add, just for clarity, I think what you're referring to with the network is the Kapiti Health Network that's being developed at the moment, and the Kapiti Health Advisory Group sort of feeding into
Yes, exactly.
Cool. Thank you.
Sorry, I wasn't clear.
Councillor Hempel.
Kia ora, Colin and Don. My question is specifically around youth health. You talked about the health of the older persons, but I'm really keen to know what kind of relationship you've had with Rachel and the team at Kāpiti Youth Support, because as you might be aware, they haven't seen an increase in their mental health funding in over 15 years. They saw a 300% increase in demand for youth mental health services since COVID. So I'm just wanting to understand what the connection's like between KHAG and Kāpiti Youth Support, but also directly with youth on the ground who are struggling.
I don't know the answer to that, to be honest. I've been concentrating on what they've given us, and those are the priorities. Don, do you have anything to say about youth?
I can't answer the question.
No. But that's the thing we can consider. I'm not anxious to take on too much that we can't do things. And I think what we've got is quite a big handful already.
Kathy.
Thank you, Colin, for coming today, and just picking up on Councillor Hanford's comments too. And I think this is one of the reasons why, with the new health reforms coming and the Local Government Act reforms, that it would be good to become part of the council, more of a component of the council, so we walk side by side or with it together with all these new reforms coming to improve the health and access for people with...
And obviously, as we've said in here, that whatever decisions you make, and they're your decisions, if you want us to get more involved and you want to sit down with Guru and the CEO, discuss how we might do that, very happy to do so.
Right. No more questions. Thank you for coming today and presenting your submission.
Have a good afternoon.
Same to you. Right, the next submitter is Jeffrey and Eva Churchman. Welcome.
Tēnā koutou I tēnei ahi ahi. Good afternoon. I'm here to add supplementary considerations only to the last section in my and my wife's submission on the long-term plan, that relating to an extension of the Waikanai Riverbank walkways, cycleways. This is something which the Rekarangi Residents Association also mentioned in their submission, although they don't go into specifics. As stated in our submission, the present paths extend the length of the Waikanai River on both banks for about 5 kilometres between the main road and the beach, and are quite close to the river, often within sight of it. Both paths are well used by cyclists and walkers, including ourselves, because it is a lovely river. However, to the east of the main road, there is no path on either side, and it is desirable that there be one. The network of cycling, walking and bridle paths around Kāpiti is something that the council has done very well and are the cause of envy elsewhere. But there are still routes where there should be more, and this is one of them. When heading towards Rekarangi from Waikanai on the Rekarangi Road, once past the water treatment plant, the road becomes rather narrow and largely devoid of shoulders over a significant part of the approximately 5 kilometre route. And there is no choice for cyclists but to cycle on the road itself, which is not good for safety. It would be desirable that there be a side path that connects to a path along the river. Between Waikanai and Rekarangi on the Rekarangi Road, there is the popular swimming hole known as the Devil's Elbow, which is accessed by an approximately 200 metre long path through the bushes from the road. That is in the centre left of the image in the submission on page 4. At that point, there are short shoulders on both sides of the road for a small number of cars to be parked there, but only a small number. We suggest that the new riverbank path go as far as the road bridge over the Waikanai River at Rekarangi, from there to the junction of Rekarangi Road and the fork forming Ngāti Awa Road and Akatara Road, and where the Anglican Church is about 400 metres. So that would be purely keeping the existing situation. This is not a potentially big ticket item in terms of cost, and all we propose is that project be investigated. A close-up drone exploration would be the first thing to do, and then a foot expedition of what seems the most promising. In some places, it would be necessary for the construction of bridges to cross from one bank to the other, and this would at least be needed to avoid the water treatment plant facility. The bridges would not need to be elaborate steel structures like Te Arawai footbridge leading to Otararua Park from the Nimmo Avenue area, which was opened in 2009. Wooden bridges should be sufficient, with the obvious requirement that they be durable and able to withstand the flash flooding of the river that occurs from time to time. Construction of the path itself could be mostly done by periodic detention labour, keeping costs low. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you very much, the two of you, for your submission. I'm just referring to page 3 of your submission and the key question around the airport and your comments. So can I ask who released a letter to you from the airport owners that was sent to the Mayor of Kāpiti Coast District Council and councillors, that was published on Waikanai Watch on Wednesday the 4th of November last year?
Councillor Randall.
I think that
Yes.
question is irrelevant.
Excuse me. Just to the subject.
The contrary to standing orders, which I don't have.
You don't have this anymore.
It's all right, I can go to the question.
Yes, do that.
Okay, thanks. I'll go to my second question. Just regarding your comment, your final comment on it, do not close the green waste facility in Park Road, Waikanai, and a matter close to my heart, being the portfolio leader in sustainable waste. So thanks for your comments. But who released to you the email from KCDC staff to councillors that you referenced in the opening comment of your story on Monday?
I do not intend to answer that question.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Compton.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, I notice in your submission you talk about the potential for micro hydro with the dam discussion. Did you have any idea what the potential generation from that is? Because I know that going back, 10, 11 years, Council did some very preliminary thinking about it, but...
No, I haven't, but it's not going to be huge. At the same time, it doesn't need to be huge to be economic and a viable proposal. No, I can't answer specifically.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Councillor Randall.
Yeah, yep. Thank you, Jeff. My question is a follow-on, because we've heard over the last couple of days a number of people living in Waikanai who want the green waste facility in Park Road retained. So I presume you've already answered the question to the previous councillor, but you agree with those submissions?
I do indeed, yes. I think it's quite important that that facility be retained there for all the reasons that other people have told you.
Councillor McCann.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to check, probably for Bernie's sake, that you actually wrote this under housing. Councillor Rob McCann seems to have the sus to have agreed with his views as stated on social media. Did you write that?
I did, yes, I agree with everything you've said, pretty much. I don't think there's much that you have said which I would disagree with. So I certainly wasn't put to me to write that by anyone else, I can assure you.
Any other questions? Doesn't seem to be any. I have one. No, I don't. Thank you very much for your submission.
Thank you.